My name is Eric Lambert. I work for Clark County Public Works, and I'm the Clean Water Outreach Specialist there. And today we'll be talking about healthy homes and clean shoes. I should note that it's kind of interesting. In Chinese culture, there's a play on words where if you step in dog poop, it's actually good luck, but not so much for any other purpose. And so we'll be talking about some strategies to manage pet waste at home and talking to neighbors. And what we'll cover tonight, we'll talk about initially, why is it important to pick up? We'll talk about some different strategies for managing pet waste at home. We'll give you some tips on addressing neighborhood issues, and then we'll leave you with some resources to support your efforts, whether at home or in the neighborhood. And as you might see there, we'll be focusing on dogs. One of these pictures is not like the other. We'll have a few things to touch on about cats as well. We'll start with perhaps the most important impact, and that's health, both human and pet health. Particularly kids and puppies are most susceptible. Pet waste is loaded with bacteria and can also harbor parasites that are harmful to kids and dogs. These are just a few of them listed on this graphic here: hookworms, E. coli, roundworms, Giardia. Those are some of the ones that you might have heard before. And the risk isn't really something that goes away if it's just left out or left alone. In fact, some people may think, hey, you leave it out, it dries up or it washes away and it's all gone. But truth be told, some of these parasites, like hookworms and roundworms, can take a number of days to a couple of weeks for those eggs to actually become infectious when they become more transmissible. And then again, if they wash into the soil, they can survive, and those parasitic eggs can survive for months, if not years. Coccidia is a parasite that's also spread through fecal matter, which puppies are specifically at risk for, particularly if they have not been vaccinated or their vaccination schedule is not complete. The parvovirus is another one that's transmitted from dogs through feces. And so really the point here being it's really in the best interest for your family, pet family members and people family members to pick it up as soon as you can. Another impact is neighborhood tensions. I walk through my neighborhood quite a bit, and I definitely know some of the yards that don't pick up, because you can tell by the smell walking by. Other times, I've stepped in it and didn't feel that good luck anytime after that. It just it doesn't feel great to have that in your neighborhood. Common areas in particular can be especially a point of tension because they're shared by everyone. Neighborhood parks, the grassy strip, areas of sidewalks. So it's another important reason to pick up after your pet. Kind of keep the feel in the neighborhood positive and respectful for everyone. Of course, another big one, and the big one that really we talk a lot about in stormwater and clean water is water quality. You have a few things that are associated with pet waste and any kind of waste. That's bacteria is a big one. That contributes to human and health risks in swimming areas. It's not uncommon for different swim beaches to be closed at different times of the year due to bacteria issues. That's part of the reason why dogs aren't allowed at, say, for example, Kleinlein Pond, because that's a swimming pond for kids. Nutrients is another thing that happens when pet waste is left outside and runs off into the stormwater and gets into our streams. These nutrients can feed algae blooms in lakes and ponds, which we've seen a lot of in the past few years, both in Vancouver Lake and Lacamas Lake. And in the right conditions, these algae blooms can become toxic algae blooms which are real issues. Even if they're not toxic, though, they still really harm the health of our waterways by depleting the oxygen that fish need to survive. And we do know, because I get this question a lot, how do you know that it's dog? Well, starting back in 2017, Clark County natural resource specialists and in our monitoring division, they started looking at some different areas that had high fecal coliform counts and high issues with bacteria in some of our streams. I think we started in the Whipple Creek watershed, but we've also tested in different areas of Salmon Creek watershed and the East Fork Lewis River. And our question was, how do we know? We've always suspected and assumed that pet waste is a major contributor to bacteria issues in our waterways, but how do we really know? And so we started to do this microbial source analysis testing, which is basically a DNA test. We can select a number of different animals, and when we run that test, it will reveal whether those DNA markers are coming up in that sample. And not surprisingly, dogs are the one animal that comes up in every single site that we sample. And how does it get there? Well, this graphic is just great without that poop emoji, because it really illustrates incredibly clearly how, in the case of the actual photo, how oil from a leaking vehicle gets into our storm drains, which lead to our waterways untreated. And pet waste is really no different. Pet waste left outside when it's rained upon and that runoff gets contaminated, it does run into the storm drain the same way that oil is. And again, a lot of areas have stormwater facilities, but they're not really designed to remove bacteria or nutrients. So it's definitely very important for water quality issues to be picking up on a regular basis. And this graphic just kind of illustrates the difference between what happens in your sanitary sewer, which that water comes out of your house and it goes to a treatment plant and it's treated before it's released into a waterway. We still don't advise, and it's still not, these treatment plants are not designed to handle pet waste. So there shouldn't be flushing of dog or particularly cat, because cat does have some additional pathogens that can bypass, that we know can bypass treatment plant processes. So neither of those are meant to be flushed either, really bagged and thrown away in the trash. But as you see, the picture on the right there is the storm sewer system, and all that runoff from all the streets, all the yards, all the parks, all the roofs, you name it. And the water does flow over grass when it's saturated in the winter and the spring. That goes down to the storm drain, down into a catch basin, in this here it's called, and carried along until it's eventually discharged in an outfall, a storm sewer outfall that looks just like this. And this is actually an outfall that's right here in Clark County. This one is along the Cougar Creek Trail, and it's discharging here in Cougar Creek. I challenge you to, next time you're on a walk, to look for these, because it's kind of a reminder that what really does go outside can come back around down through this pipe with the vehicle it's traveling with being stormwater and discharged right into our streams. And it does all add up. Clark County is home to more than 110,000 dogs. A conservative estimate is that combined they make 18 tons of poop every day. And so again, it's really something that everyone needs to do all the time. And so just like it says at the bottom, do your part. And I will have some more cute puppy photos as we go along. So managing pet waste at home, the important thing, I think, is to kind of get set up for doing the right thing. And that starts with getting the right tools. Some people, like myself, I don't have a dog right now, but when I did, I was just a bag and grab kind of person. I don't mind picking it up in a bag with my hand. But other people might prefer to use a trowel. There's all sorts of different, these are just a few products out there that you can buy. There's a scissor scooper, it looks like, a rake and bin kind of scooper. There's a handheld one that will scoop it for you. I've seen some that you can actually wrap a bag kind of around these those jaws, and it will kind of pick it up and bag it at the same time, and you can get more than one pile that way. And so those are just a few things to kind of make it easier. You can buy bags. It's important to buy bags now because you may not be able to have the same supply of bags that you had before. In the past, I used to just use whatever bags I have, and now I would save produce bags and use those because with the bag ban, we don't have those plastic bags anymore. And a lot of people ask me all the time, hey, do I need to have these biodegradable bags? My answer is no. It's not really that going to make a difference. Plastic is fine. I know that there's a thought that it feels a little more ecological, and to some extent it is. But plastic is fine if you don't want to buy the biodegradable bags. Our landfills are designed to handle waste like this when it's bagged up. So that's a definite must-have. And then, of course, you want to wear gloves or wash your hands immediately after scooping. Maybe you just have that kind of pet waste glove if you want to have that and you're going to be using a trowel or something like that. Those are some good things to have. A definite do is to pick up every few days at the least. Some people do it every day, and that's great. If you can't get it to every day, try doing every 2 days or every 3 days. But if there's an area where kids play, you're definitely going to want to be doing it as frequently as you can. Because again, that's the population that rolls in it, that accidentally gets it on their fingers, that who knows what. And so again, kind of going back to some of the different pathogens and parasites that are found in this stuff, leaving it out longer is actually creates more of a problem in some of those cases. And so it's important to pick up, obviously, to keep the kids and other pets out of it, but also to try to reduce the kind of the life cycle of some of these parasites. If you don't have the time, or you don't have the help or the support to do it, there are some other alternatives. There are some pet waste services that can come and pick up at your house. So that's another option. If that would work for you, you can Google that. There's a few companies around town that do that. Now, some of the don'ts, and these are really important to make sure that we don't do. And sometimes, I know people that are really, really environmental and very conscious of doing the right thing, and they want to compost because composting is great in a lot of ways. But pet waste is one thing that we do not want to compost. I've seen products that are kind of these mini composters that people can it's like a cylinder with a lid that people can bury in their yard, and it allegedly composts the pet waste. I do not, under any circumstance, recommend that. Number one, that cylinders, the ones that I've seen, they're not even big enough to collect enough pet waste to actually get the heat warm enough in that, if it was to compost, to kill any of the pathogens or parasites. Number two, you're putting groundwater at risk when you're digging that hole. And especially if you're in an area that has a lot of infiltration, you do not want to contaminate the groundwater under any circumstance. It's really just one of those things that composting is awesome, but not for pet waste under any circumstance. Don't leave it as fertilizer too. I hear that a lot. Oh, it's fertilizer. And actually, it does contain nutrients, but a lot of times too much. In fact, if you go to certain areas, maybe like a dog run, I've seen dog runs at apartment complexes, for example, or different parks where you can just see where the dogs go, and you'll see a bunch of little yellow dead spots on the grass. So contrary to helping the grass as a fertilizer, it's actually going to do more harm than good. Don't flush it, especially the cat waste, and especially if you're on a septic system. I know somehow certain kitty litter companies or products will advertise as flushable. Do not flush them. It's just the kind of thing that you don't want to deal with. It's the kind of thing that you just think, you got to look at the risk, right? Nobody wants to have that kind of clog. Nobody wants to have an issue with their indoor sewer system. It's just not worth it. Pet waste, cat, dog, belongs in the trash, bagged up. And again, definitely don't leave it out for long periods of time during the rainy season. That's when it's going to have the highest chance of runoff. But again, also for the breeding and the life cycle of the parasites. But even leaving it outside, again, in the summertime, same thing. It's still going to be still going to have kind of feeding into the life cycle of these parasites, which we don't want to do. So on walks, of course, I always like to tell people, bring extra bags. Number one, I've definitely gone on walks where, I've run out of a bag. It happens to everybody. And thankfully, there's been someone else there with a bag. And that just got me thinking, hey, I want to be that person too. So, you bring a couple of extra bags for your dog. I would bring extra bags for my dog after the first time that happened. And then, and if I didn't use them, then maybe I would give them to someone else. And that's a great way to actually, to talk to people about it too. It's always great if you see someone that maybe didn't pick up, maybe they didn't have a bag, and you can offer them a bag in kind of a supportive way. And that can go a long way. And a lot of people I talk to, and on some of our trails, I see, the full bag. Somebody bagged it up and they left it on the trail, and then either just didn't come back for it, forgot it, didn't want to carry it. And I get that because, a lot of times when you're taking your dog for a walk, you're going out there and the first thing your dog wants to do is go to the bathroom. And so your dog didn't get the memo that this is a 3-mile trip, 3-mile walk, and you didn't really want to carry the bag for 3 miles. So they've got these products here. That little red one there is called a Do Loop. You can check out our website to see more about that, cleanwaterdogs.com. But that's a great example of a product. There's a whole bunch of them that are similar to that will kind of allow you to carry it without having to actually carry it. So that's important as well, to make sure that, you're going all the way, not just, putting it in the bag, but putting it in the bag in the trash too. Addressing neighborhood issues with adorable dogs. So I get this kind of question all the time. I run this Canines for Clean Water program here at Clark County, which all the cities here also participate in. And I get this question all the time. Hey, I know there's this area, and I know these neighbors that are doing this, and they think they know who it is, and they got this idea, they got this suspicion, they definitely know they have a problem for sure. And they want to say, well, what do we do about it? I think one of the most important things to do is to connect with motivated neighbors or your neighborhood association. It's hard to address a neighborhood issue on your own. And so getting the support of your neighbors is going to be really important. You're going to want to get your message out. This can be maybe if you have an HOA newsletter or a neighborhood association newsletter, maybe it's at a neighborhood association or HOA meeting. Maybe your neighborhood has a social media account, or maybe you want to take to Nextdoor or a place like that, a platform like that, to help get the message out. We have some social media graphics that you can use at cleanwaterdogs.com, which have been helpful in the past. We've also got signage. The sign on the left is intended for common areas, maybe multifamily housing or a trailhead or a little park that might be shared by your community or your neighborhood. And then the sign on the right is a little bit smaller. It's like a 6x6 inch sign, which comes with a little lawn stake, and that's intended for people's lawns in their home. And I can speak to experience on this. I actually live in a neighborhood, and along one of my sides of my yard, I have a corner lot, and we have a big hedgerow, like a big laurel bush, which is great. You know, it's got the green fence, you know, a little bit of privacy. No one can kind of see into my house, and you know, that's great. I love it. On the other hand, it also provides privacy for people walking their dog that don't want to pick up. And unfortunately, a couple of years back, I was finding pet waste in this little kind of area that had kind of been created where it looked like some people were either throwing it or the dog was letting their dog go there, kind of like in the bushes right next to my water meter. And I wasn't cool with that. So I used one of these signs, and they work. They really do work. Just kind of having something simple like that, something friendly like that, can really make a difference. Another idea, public commitments. We have a Canines for Clean Water pledge that you can take at cleanwaterdogs.com, and you know, you can encourage your neighbors to do that. We have a campaign going along Cougar Creek Trail right now where we created like a little kiosk. So if you have a message board, you could do something similar to this, where we post photos of people that have taken the Canines for Clean Water pledge. And this kind of follows a school of thought around what they call community-based social marketing, which kind of is a set of ideas for creating behavior change. And this is the behavior that we wanted to change. We wanted people to pick up along the trail. And people would ask me about it, and I would say, you know, as simply as it can be, and this is shown by research, you know, neighbors are more likely to do the right thing when they know that their other neighbors are also doing the right thing. And so by showing this kind of public commitment of this pledge in your neighborhood is one way to kind of set the norm in your neighborhood and make it known that this is the expectation and that other neighbors and a bunch of other neighbors are already doing it. So some tips for actually talking to the neighbors, because that's a whole nother thing. You know, what I just talked about, some resources, some ideas, but it can be another thing to actually talk to the neighbors. It can be a challenging thing. And so I always want to just emphasize that you kind of want to be supportive in a way as much as you can. So Canines for Clean Water has free resources to support people picking up, like free bag dispensers or do loop. And you know, another way to offer support, as we talked about before, was to just offer somebody a bag. And another way to talk to neighbors is about educating people. Not everybody knows what we just talked about in this webinar, that pet waste is raw sewage. Not many people think about it that way. Not everybody knows the water quality impacts. Not everybody knows the health and the other pet risks with pet waste. And so it's good to be able to educate people. Accusations and finger pointing, you know, that can exasperate issues. So I definitely recommend taking a different avenue than doing that when when people point fingers, other people put up walls. And so we want to try to find a consensus, and we want to give people to do the right behavior, not to feel bad about doing something, about not doing something, at least in a confrontational way. So here are some facts that you may be able to help educate people with. Dog poop can make kids and pets sick. Pet waste left outside contaminates stormwater. And stormwater is not treated to remove bacteria and nutrients from pet waste. There are more than 110,000 dogs in Clark County. And if you need that, poop tonnage, it was 18 tons per day, which is mind-boggling. And also that research and scientific testing of DNA has actually confirmed that it is coming from dogs, and that's how it's happening. So as we kind of wind this down here, it's kind of an aspirational message here. Everybody wants these shoes, and everyone kind of needs to really just scoop it, bag it, and trash it everywhere. It's simple to say. I know it's not always as easy to do, but we have some resources to help at cleanwaterdogs.com. So I do encourage you to check that out. You can go to cleanwaterdogs.com. You can also see the Canines for Clean Water program and a bunch of other stuff at stormwaterpartners.com. And so I want to thank you all for listening and staying with me here. And again, I want to offer myself as a resource in your efforts. So you can reach me at eric.lambert@clark.wa.gov. And my email address is also at cleanwaterdogs.com. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. We're going to take a short pause as we switch gears over to Sam's presentation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box in the next few minutes. In those resources that Eric shared, we will be compiling a list of resources as part of the larger Healthy Homes and Healthy Waters webinar series. So those will be included in that list. But I see that we have also linked one of those hyperlinks in the chat already. So any questions? All right, Sam, I think we're ready for you.
All right, sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam, and I am the Livestock Conservation Planner at Clark Conservation District. And tonight, I'm just going to touch on some ways that you guys can improve your manure management if you happen to own livestock or any smaller species in urban areas, especially Vancouver. Yeah. And then this is just an overview of the topics I'm going to cover. I'm going to touch on considerations for having livestock in urban settings, the impacts and importance of managing manure, and ways to store and handle the manure. And these are some of the key points for why manure management is important. Poor manure management can reduce livestock performance and health, can have human health impacts, can increase pest populations, result in complaints from neighbors, and can have serious impacts on the environment, especially in our surface waters. So some urban livestock considerations. Cities, counties, and neighborhood associations may have varying ordinances in place that govern the number of animals, the type and location of animal housings. Be sure to look into these things prior to obtaining livestock to make sure you're doing things correctly. Another thing to consider is connecting with your neighbors to let them know of your plans for livestock, building facilities, or anything else that can help mitigate any future complaints with them. It's also good to research the livestock you're planning to get to know about potential diseases or parasites they may have the potential to spread or get. You'll also want to think about how much space the animal you're getting will require and the amount of food and shelter they need. So how much manure do your animals produce? This table here gives averages for the amount of manure an animal generates, which can help you gauge the size of storage bin you may need to contain it. You can estimate the amount of collectible manure animals produce by using the formula on this slide. The collectible amounts would be for the animals in a contained area, like a paddock or a hard surface location. Some might just have 1 or 2 of these animals, but on a yearly basis, these volumes really add up. You'll also need to take into consideration what kind of bedding you may be using for animals in the confinement or shelter area, whether it's straw, hay, or pellets. Each of those have an impact on the overall storage requirements. This also provides an idea of the impact these small quantities of, say, like a chicken or a rabbit can have on the watershed. So some of the impacts of manure. Manure contains the nutrients nitrogen and phosphorus, which are necessary for plant and animal life in streams, lakes, and other surface waters. But when large amounts of these flow into these bodies of water, it throws the system out of balance, causing something known as eutrophication. This causes aquatic plants and algae to rapidly grow and depletes the oxygen, creating a dead zone that ultimately harms aquatic animals. These algae blooms can also release toxins that can be harmful to people, pets, and livestock. Manure buildup also welcomes unwanted pests such as like rats or flies in excess. Livestock standing and manure buildup can also reduce the livestock performance and overall health. So some ways to improve manure management include creating a heavy use area, which is a hardened surface where the livestock hang out during the rainy seasons, where you can pick up their manure every 1 to 3 days and put it in a covered manure pile. The covered manure pile can help speed up the composting process and reduce any sort of runoff into surface waters. Creating the heavy use area also prevents soil erosion and compaction that is likely during rainy seasons and from overuse. So a heavy use area or a sacrifice area are meant to help reduce mud and manure buildup, as well as prevent soil compaction during the rainy season. For urban livestock owners, these areas will help reduce the mud buildup that may happen in the backyard. If you have chickens that are in a coop, you can put a heavy use area underneath to help capture some of the droppings. Implementing a heavy use area can also help designate a spot in your yard so that you're not having to share the space with the animals, which can have impacts on human health. A general rule for these heavy use areas is if you have 3 inches of mud during the rainy season, install a heavy use area that is twice as thick as that. That way, as it sinks down, you're not compacting it. Some sort of uses or some examples of things you can use for these heavy use areas for footing materials would be gravel, sand, rock, or cement. One other thing that can have a significant impact on the amount of mud buildup is installing gutters to help route the water away from these shelters and heavy use areas. That way it's not furthering the buildup. And so manure storage can look many different ways. It doesn't have to be anything special, but the main goal is to cover the material to control the temperature, moisture, and potential for runoff, which can leach into surface waters and have negative impacts on the quality. Having some sort of floor underneath the storage will also help prevent any sort of seepage and reduce runoffs. Concrete or wood chips are really good options for this floor underneath. If you only have a few animals, you can store manure in plastic garbage cans with lids or metal bins. These structures can be low cost and easy to build. Consider the location of the manure storage areas to minimize odors that may be a nuisance to nearby neighbors. So what do you need for composting? Well, composting is the controlled breakdown of organic material into a product known as humus. Effective composting will involve several factors: materials high in carbon, such as leaves, straw, and woody materials, as well as materials high in nitrogen, such as grass and manure. Using finer composting ingredients, such as sawdust, is a great source of carbon and can help speed up the process as well. Typically, your carbon-rich materials are going to be the bedding that is used for your livestock. And good livestock and composting processes will need air, water, and to maintain a temperature that helps kill the bacteria and the seeds. So at a minimum, turn the pile twice during the composting process, but turning more regularly will help improve the quality of the compost. Purchasing a long probe thermometer will help you know when the pile is hot enough. If the pile heats up to 145 degrees for at least 3 days, this will kill most of the weed seeds. As soon as the pile cools a bit from the first heating, it can be turned for the first time. When you are turning the pile, you want to incorporate things from the outside and from the top of it. That way it's composting more evenly. And then once you think the composting process is done, after it's reached those temperatures and stabilized, you want to let the compost age for a few months just to make sure everything is good to go. And one other thing you can do is, and for aeration purposes, you can use PVC pipes or something like that to help get the air in to help speed up the process as well. And then for people who live in town and maybe have like a smaller composting pile, you can utilize various sort of bins or barrel type things that work really well and can also reduce odors that your neighbors might not love. And so benefits of composting, there are many benefits. Some of these include the reduction of odors and flies. It also reduces the volume of manure, so you're not taking up as much space. The finished compost is dry and fairly light, so you can incorporate it into your raised garden beds, around your trees, or if you have the space and your soil needs it based on a soil test, you can also spread it. Yeah. And the composting process can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to be completed. So just keep that in mind. And then some things to help limit runoff from livestock waste. If you live near surface waters, or you notice that you might have some wetland vegetation, or you live near a riparian zone, what you really want to do is fence the livestock out, make sure that they don't have access to that water, but that they have a clean water source. That really helps. And then you really ultimately want to have a plan. So if you live in town and you're wanting to have some livestock, you know, whether it's a mini sheep or something like that, think about where you're going to keep them, where they're going to be during the rainy season, so that they're not just outstanding in the water, how you can keep the vegetation that you have in your backyard without completely damaging it, how they're going to get the necessary food that they need to survive, because likely if you're living in town, the grass in your backyard isn't going to be adequate. And then think about if you happen to have a septic system, what the weight capacity would be for having livestock there or fencing them out of that area. Yeah. Nope. Sorry, I think I lost my presentation.
We can see this. Yep.
That? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Oops, oh no, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm almost done anyways. And then this is just from the city of Vancouver. These are their livestock guidelines, and it touches on how they categorize various sizes and types of livestock. So I really recommend, if you're planning on getting livestock and you live in town, please check with your local city for any ordinances that they have and permitting that they might require if you were to put some sort of livestock facilities in. And just some reminders and resources. Park Conservation District can provide landowners with free technical assistance. And in some cases, we do have financial assistance to help with practices, like I mentioned, like waste storage facilities, heavy use areas, and exclusion fencing around riparian areas. And here's my contact information.
Great, thank you, Sam. All right, just another reminder to put any questions you may have in the Q&A box. We'll be sticking around. And in the meantime, I had a question kind of geared more towards dogs. In a conversation with a coworker, how would you recommend if someone had a very large yard and their dog had free roam of it and they're not necessarily able to track down all of the dog's waste? What would you recommend, just any steps you can take towards, ensuring cleaner water?
Yeah, I think every few days, and that's kind of where you go back to doing the best you can every few days. That can help. And, to kind of go with this too, another challenge that I hear a lot is, in the rainy season when it's dark when you're going to work and it's dark when you're getting home. Some people carry a little flashlight to kind of help find it a little more frequently. Another thing that I've heard that I can't, I haven't actually tried myself, but that dogs like to go on like pea gravel. So I don't know if there was a spot that maybe dogs would be inclined to go on. It might be another opportunity to do it. But sometimes, yeah, it a lot depends on the dog. And I know that dogs' habits are a little bit different. But sometimes, keeping your eye on them when they're out there, maybe you can start to find some habits and some trends that might give you some clues to where you can go to be more effective with it.
Cool, thanks. All right. If you're going to ask questions, these are two people you're going straight to the source with this stuff. So chime in while you can. Looks like we have a shy crowd tonight. Oh, what do you recommend for flies? And I think that's directed towards you, Sam.
For flies, I would say definitely picking up the waste and storing it, whether it's covered. If you can cover your manure pile with a tarp, that's going to really help. If you do have the ability to put in some sort of composting system with a cover on it, that's just going to kind of attract them over there and keep them out and away from the livestock. Obviously, there's no escaping flies, but those are helpful too. So.
All right, any last questions? Okay, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you so much, Eric and Sam, for a very great and informative talk. And yeah, we'll see you all next week for the final week of the Healthy Homes, Healthy Waters webinar series, where we will have a talk on backyard habitats. So we hope to see you back soon.